Warm men burn out. Cold men build legacies. Machiavelli understood something most never will. Empires aren't built by feelings. They're built by those who feel, but don't flinch, who love, but never kneel, because passion burns fast, but ice endures. That's why in the end, the cold always win. Why do passionate rulers rise quickly, but collapse in flames? Why do emotional leaders vanish from history, while the cold, the detached, the unmoved shape it forever? Because passion wins battles, but only coldness wins empires. Machiavelli saw it in every court, every throne room, every betrayal. The warm get remembered for a moment, the cold become immortal. In this third and final part, I'll take you through the 10 brutal traits cold men master to turn power into permanence, and why, if you want to build something that lasts, you must become ice. You know what passion does? It makes noise, it sparks, it excites, it moves fast, but then it crashes just as fast. That's what warm men build. Moments, loud launches, motivational speeches, one big win they never recover from. Cold men, they don't care about one viral win. They build structures, routines, systems, and flows that print results whether they're feeling good or not. That's the difference. The passionate man builds when he's inspired. The cold man builds so that he never needs to be. Machiavelli knew this long before the corporate world did. He watched warm rulers rise in revolution and die in revolution. But the cold, the ones who moved in silence, created order, delegated power, built bureaucracy, they stayed. They weren't impressive. They were inevitable. Think about it. The king who built a court, trained advisors, set protocols, outlived the warrior who led every charge, because fire wins the first fight, but only ice builds a fortress. That's what you want to become. Not the guy who kills it for a month, but the one who's still standing a decade later, not because he kept running, but because he built something that runs on its own. That's how cold men move, quiet, calculated, and permanent. Ever seen what happens when a storm hits the weak? People scream. Panic spreads faster than the problem itself. They wait for someone, anyone, to take control, and that's where coldness becomes power. See, warm people? They feel everything: fear, doubt, anxiety. They absorb the chaos like a sponge. But cold men, they do the opposite. They cut through the noise, like a scalpel through fog. They see what others miss, the structure hiding beneath the mess. Machiavelli didn't admire those who avoided disaster. He respected those who used it. Because when chaos hits, war, betrayal, recession, personal collapse, it doesn't just test you, it reveals you. The warm look for shelter. The cold become the storm's commander. Look at history. Julius Caesar didn't rise in peace. He rose in civil war, because while Rome was splitting at the seams, he organized legions. He imposed order. He moved without panic. Same in business. When markets crash, the warm sell in fear. The cold restructure, adapt, and buy back power cheap. So here's the shift. When things go wrong, you don't react. You slow down, you breathe, and you give order to what feels like madness, because the world isn't destroyed by chaos. It's destroyed by the people who panic inside it. Coldness isn't cruelty. It's what saves you when nothing else will. Let me ask you something. How many names from history do you remember because they were liked? And how many because they built something that outlived them? That's the difference right there. Warm men chase applause. They want to be cheered, validated, seen. Cold men, they build silently, not for likes, but for legacy. See, popularity is loud, it's short-lived, it's a crowd's approval. Here today, gone the moment you stop entertaining them. But legacy is quiet. It's the system you build that runs without you, the principles you enforce that don't bend with trends, the empire that still stands when your name is carved in stone. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince to make people feel good. He wrote it to outlive kings. He understood the crowd's affection is the weakest currency in power, because the same people who cheer you today will turn on you the moment they're uncomfortable. But if you build structures, economic, political, psychological, they'll remain, and those structures will speak for you long after you're gone. In real life, you see it when leaders don't just go viral, they build systems. when founders design businesses that run without them, when fathers raise sons with discipline, not approval. So here's the pivot. Stop asking, do they like me? Start asking, will this outlast me? Because power built on applause melts under time, but power built on systems, that becomes a monument. Here's the truth most people miss. Power isn't about being great while you're alive. It's about making sure your absence still controls the room. The warm, they die, and so does their influence. Their legacy gets buried with them. But the cold, they build so deliberately, so strategically, that even in death, their fingerprints stay on the world. They write laws that can't be undone. They raise heirs trained to protect their vision. They design structures so tight, even time can't break them. That's what power really is. Not applause, not fame, not trending while you're alive, but forcing the world to move in your direction, long after you're gone. And only coldness builds that kind of permanence. Ever notice how the most dangerous people aren't the loudest enemies, but the subtle flatterers? They don't come with swords, they come with smiles. You've seen it before. The emotional leader surrounded by yes men. The CEO who keeps the friend who feeds his ego. The politician who's praised into blindness by his own court. And what happens? They get played. Because flattery is the oldest weapon in history, and the warm-hearted fall for it every time. But the cold man, he doesn't react to praise. He doesn't need approval to feel powerful. That's what makes him unbreakable. Machiavelli warned, rulers who love admiration die by manipulation. Because once people know what makes you feel good, they own the lever to control you. The cold don't give them that lever. They nod at praise, but they never chase it. They hear emotion, but don't bow to it. They observe, calculate, and stay still. It's like a poker game. The emotional man shows his hand every time he's flattered. The cold man just watches and lets the other player reveal himself. So, if you want to avoid being manipulated, if you want to become untouchable in business, in love, in life, don't just train your mind, train your temperature. Because when your power doesn't rise or fall with other people's emotions, they can't pull your strings. Most people, they're addicted to speed. They want results now, power now, recognition yesterday. But cold men, they move differently. They play the long game, not because they're slow, but because they're dangerous. See, fire burns bright, but burns out fast. Ice, it holds. It shapes mountains. It survives every season. A warm man might make $1 million in a week and lose it in a month. A cold man builds a system, a structure, an empire that feeds him for decades. Why? Because he's not chasing dopamine. He's not reacting to noise. He's patient, and patience is power. Machiavelli didn't write for the man who wants to win today. He wrote for the man who wants to rule tomorrow. Cold men sit in silence while the world runs in circles. They let enemies burn themselves out in chaos. Then they move once, and the board changes forever. So if you're feeling rushed, pressured to prove something quickly, stop, breathe. Remember, the one who controls time controls everything. Let others sprint. You build slow, you build strong, you build to last. Here's what warm men do when they spot a rival. They panic. They try to destroy them. The cold, they smile and use them. Because here's what Machiavelli understood. Your enemy is never just a threat. He's also a resource. An emotional man will waste months trying to humiliate his rival, prove he's better, shut him down. The cold man, he studies him. What does he want? What does he fear? How can I make him move in a way that benefits me? Think about modern politics, business wars, social media drama. The loudest ones, they burn out trying to win arguments. The quiet ones, they redirect enemies to fight each other while they grow in silence. Sometimes your rival has influence, let him speak, while you feed him just enough rope to hang himself. Sometimes your enemy is strong, offer him a deal that looks like a win, but secretly chains him to your game. This isn't cruelty, this is cold strategy. Because here's the real secret. Every enemy you obsess over owns a piece of you, but every enemy you convert into a tool extends you. Use rivals for leverage, make them predictable, turn their fire into your fuel, and never ever let hate blind you to opportunity. Coldness turns obstacles into openings. Warm leaders, they delegate from emotion. They say things like, "I trust him, he's been loyal," or "She deserves more control. She's been here since the beginning." And just like that, they give away power. Not because it's smart, but because it feels right. Cold leaders, they don't share power. They assign tasks. There's a difference. You can trust someone with a role, but never the center, never the throne. Machiavelli warned, power that is shared is power that slips, and the more hands it touches, the more unstable it becomes. Let's be honest, you've probably seen this at work. Startups where co-founders are equals until no one knows who actually decides. Or families where parents give every child equal say, and suddenly, chaos rules the house. The cold man builds a hierarchy, not a democracy. Everyone knows where the center is, and it's him. That doesn't mean being a tyrant. It means being the gravity everything orbits around. Every major decision comes back to you. Every key resource flows through your hands, not out of ego, out of survival. Because when power is scattered, your enemies don't have to take you down. They just have to chip away at the ones around you. But when you are the axis, when the center is clear, you're harder to break, harder to replace, and damn near impossible to overthrow. The warm man gives pieces away. The cold man remains the core. Always. Most people think fear is cruel. They say, "I don't want people to be afraid of me. I want them to respect me." That's noble. But here's the cold truth. Respect without fear doesn't last. Machiavelli said it best. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Why? Because fear creates structure. It creates boundaries. It's the unspoken force that keeps chaos from seeping in. You can love your king, but you won't betray the one you fear. Look at the world. Companies, nations, even families. The most stable ones aren't built on affection. They're built on clear consequences. The cold man doesn't rule with rage. He doesn't explode, threaten, or lash out. That's weakness wearing a mask. He rules with controlled fear, the kind that says, if you cross this line, everything you enjoy disappears. Fear is not about being a monster. It's about making people think twice. Because when people fear loss more than they crave gain, they stay in line. Love makes people bold. Fear makes them careful. And when you're trying to build something that lasts, careful is what keeps it standing. Most men die twice. Once when they stop breathing, and again when everything they built falls apart without them. That second death, that's what cold men refuse to allow. See, warm leaders, they often rule with passion, charisma, personal charm. Their power is them. Take them away, and the whole structure crumbles like wet sand. But the cold, they don't just build power, they build systems that outlive them. They train successors, not friends. They write laws, not favors. They lock in financial, political, and psychological infrastructure that cannot be undone with a single funeral, because they know, if your empire dies with you, it was never an empire, it was a performance. The cold man thinks long. He asks, what happens when I'm gone? And then he answers that question before anyone else can. He prepares his heir. He removes uncertainty. He burns disloyalty before it becomes rebellion. And by the time death knocks, the throne is not empty. It's waiting, and the empire doesn't mourn. It marches forward. Most people live soft, and they die soft, warm, liked, forgotten. But the cold, they don't chase memory. They engrave it, because warmth fades fast. A smile, a tear, a kind gesture. It dies in the wind. But cold order, that becomes law. That becomes tradition. That becomes history. You think people remember Julius Caesar because he was kind? Because he inspired people? No, they remember him because he seized absolute power. Because he restructured Rome. Because his legacy forced the world to adapt to his decisions long after he was gone. That's what the cold do. They don't just influence the present. They bend the future. They design systems so solid, ideas so sharp that even death can't kill them. And that's Machiavelli's final truth. The cold always win because they leave no room for the world to forget them. Now imagine this. You're no longer just a man chasing control. You've become a force that creates it. Not through noise, not through emotion, but through structure, through cold, deliberate action. Imagine living in such calm discipline that betrayal doesn't shake you, chaos doesn't rattle you, and even death can't erase you. Because what you built wasn't based on feelings or moments, but on foundations that cannot be moved. That's why the cold always wins. They don't chase the spotlight. They become the architecture that history is built on. And long after the warm have burned out, the cold still rule.